Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Knowledge Group webcast, Cyber Threat Intelligence, How to Prepare Against Attacks from the Deep and Dark Web. I'm Sal G. Ingrasso, your moderator for today's event, and we'll hand over to our speaker in just a moment. I just want to quickly point out that over the next few slides, you'll see information about our participant, his firm, and answers to some of our most frequently asked questions. On the screen now, you'll see a link to sign up for our 14-day free trial, giving you access to some of our live and recorded programs. There's also a feedback quiz on the homepage too, where you can let us know what you think of the Knowledge Group and today's event. So I would like to take a moment now to thank our sponsor, Cyberint. Their information is on the screen now. I also want to extend our thanks to today's speaker, as well as our attendees joining us live or listening on demand. So let's introduce today's speaker, Dr. Guy Almog, Cyber Threat Intelligence Team Leader, Cyberint. Guy is an experienced cyber threat intelligence professional with over a decade of experience in OSINT, HUMINT, WEBINT, fraud detection, as well as in academic research. Guy holds a PhD from the Department of Asian Studies at the University of Haifa. Now, Guy, as a reminder, to advance your slides, all you need to say is next slide when you're ready. We'll be moving them for you. And to advance animation on any slide, please say next point for a single animation, or say build the slide out if you want all the animated points to be displayed at once. Again, to advance the animation, say next point for a single animation, or say build the slide out if you want all the animated points to be displayed at once. So we have slide number 9 on the screen now. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Guy Almog. Over to you whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Sal, and thanks everyone for joining us. So in today's talk, we're gonna dive into the world of threat intelligence and various threats that we can meet in the deep and dark web. And next slide, please. Great. So first, we'll start with some basic definitions, right, about clear, deep, and dark web, but also we'll see the undeniable connectivity between these realms, which I think is crucial to a correct understanding of the cybersecurity realm, right, and the threats that we can face in this world. Next. Then we'll see two main use cases during this specific talk. And again, each of these cases will see their link to both the deep and dark web and the clear web. Next. So the first case in point would be credential leakage, and the second one will be phishing. And we'll talk more about each one of these shortly. And after we'll do that, we'll also, next point please, we'll see, next point. We'll get more info about what it means, right, to have a threat intelligence service and how to deal with such threats and other via threat intelligence perspective, and we'll get some useful tips for employee and customer protection. Next, and we'll also have time for Q&A, hopefully. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so a lot of time, right, especially if you're coming outside of this specific field of expertise, you might think about the dark web as a really, really scary place, right? Next, please. Like with all kinds of threats, drugs, weapons, hackers, and malwares, ransomwares, and everything bad, right? And, you know, usually the media and for also marketing purposes, a lot of companies, they promote that this dark web as some kind of ultimate evil. And on the other hand, this might make you think of the clear web as a very, let's say, benevolent place, nice, etc., which is all colorful and playful and harmless. But next slide, please. Actually, in reality, the picture is much more complex. Next. Okay, so as we can see, it's possible to come across every kind of threat, both on the clear web and on the dark web. And also we'll talk in a moment about the difference between the dark and deep web. But basically everything is connected in my point of view, right? And you can find harmless or beneficial things in the dark web, but also you can find serious threats in the clear web, and often these are connected. Next, please. Okay, so let's take it step by step now for the definition, and also we'll try to see the connectivity. Okay, so the most basic definition, right, for surface web or clear web is basically everything that is indexed by search engines and that you can access via your normal browsers. So, for example, if I write a certain word, right, or a query on Google, and then I see certain results, those results can be considered as surface web or clear web. Now, deep web is everything that is not indexed on search engines, and alternatively that you need to have some kind of a user to access this information or internal access. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with obviously crime or shady stuff. Most of the internet, in fact, is deep web. And in a second, we'll see exactly what I mean here, because I assume also the internet that you consume, right? Most of the stuff you consume can be classified as deep web, and you'll understand in a second what I mean. And inside the deep web, there's a certain section called usually dark web or darknet. And this section means that in order to get to these resources, you'll need special browsers, usually it's Tor. Next, please. But Tor browser in order to access websites with .onion suffixes. But we have other less popular services like Freenet or I2P, which are also considered darknet or dark web. But let's now go point by point for some examples in order to understand, right, what is the difference between surface web or clear web to deep web. So next, please. Okay, so as I said, first of all, surface web is indexed by search engine and is accessible directly, right? You have the URL, you can get to the information you want without any kind of additional registrations, or you don't have to pay for it. Usually it's free and accessible. Next. Okay, so Facebook, I assume everyone here knows about this platform. And this is a source that some of the information on it could be classified as clear web, and a lot of the information on it can be classified as deep web. What do I mean? For example, when you Google a certain query, right, about Facebook, a lot of time you get results from Facebook and you can access them directly, even if you don't have a Facebook user and you're not registered. On the other hand, a lot of results you cannot see without an active Facebook user, which means you have to register and create a user, and only then you can see these results. And also inside the platform, there are a lot of subgroups and communication between certain individuals or certain groups that you can only see if you're admitted to this certain group or to this certain event, etc. So this is definitely could be considered deep web, right? And also, threat actors, all kinds of hackers or other malicious actors can have closed Facebook groups with malicious content in those groups. So this is, again, one source which can be divided both as clear web and deep web. Next, please. Same, by the way, for cybercrime forums. So as you can see here, we see a famous cybercrime forums, which was recently seized by the FBI, I think. So it's no longer active, at least in the last few weeks, but it was one of the most prolific cybercrime forums. And it was accessible. Many of the results on this forum were accessible from simple searches on Google, by the way. You could search some queries and get directly into very malicious content on this website. On the other hand, for some, let's say, premium content on this website or for internal communication with threat actors on this forum, you had to register a user, and for some content, only paying users were able to see it, etc. So it had obviously a lot of deep web related material, but totally discoverable from the clear web. So again, this is a source which can be defined as both clear web and deep web. Next. Same goes for Telegram, by the way, right? It's a basically chat and social media platform, and there are a lot of services that also index Telegram results on Google or on other search engines. However, a lot of groups are by invite only, or you need to get into the group in order to actually see the messages inside the group, and that makes it deep web as well. Next point, please. Also, right, the knowledge group, same deal. Basically, you can get some results, right, for free from search engines and from the clear web, but some of the content, as you know, is paid content, which means that you can't, or you shouldn't get it without access, right, without a paying user, and this is also considered deep web. Next. Okay, so I think we covered the basic definition here, and if someone is interested in more maybe fine-tuning of this definition, we'll have time in the end for Q&As. But for now, let's have maybe one or two examples to make it clearer. Okay, so thank you. This is the default login page of Facebook. Okay, and as we can see from the URL, facebook.com, it's clear web, discoverable by search engines. Anyone can access it. Next. And here we have the exact same login page from the darknet version of Facebook. And you see the .onion. And by the way, this is 100% a legitimate website, right? And it's operated by Facebook, and it's legitimate to log in via this login page to Facebook. Now, what is more dangerous, right? The clear web version of this website or of this login page, or the dark net version? And this is really depending on the place you live, maybe, or on the context, right? Because in some places, as you know, Facebook is illegal or censored, right? And individual cannot log in via the clear web, or it's very problematic to do so. And for these reasons, logging in from Tor browser, which offer much more privacy and might be a bypass for censoring mechanism, right? So it's a good option in these cases. So in this specific case, for example, it might be even safer to log in into Facebook from the darknet version, which, by the way, Tor might even be a bit more safer browser, right? Because the privacy settings, etc. But if you want to see the real danger, right? Next, please. it looks like this, right? So a few days before I started to make this presentation, you can see the timestamp here, right? I found this specific login page on the clear web, by the way, right, on February 28th, right? And you can see I censored, of course, the URL here, but you see .io, which means that it's clear web, and this is basically a phishing website, right, pretending to be a login for Facebook. And obviously, this is the real danger in this context, right? So we saw that we have legitimate login pages both on the clear and darknet, but in this case, the danger came in this specific case from the clear web. Next. Next. Okay, so now we'll get a bit more theoretical, and then we'll dive into more concrete examples. So as I was saying, when you look at an organization, right, and you're dealing with various threats which are coming from clear, deep, and dark web, you need to look at it from two main point of views, right? You need to consider two main spheres. The first is how targeted are you? And when I say you, we can also divide it into a few parts. So next, please. Thanks. So you can be targeted in terms of clear web, in terms of deep web, and in terms of dark web, which is a sub issue, let's say, of deep web. Next. And all of these are, of course, as we've just seen, are connected, and we'll see more examples as we go on. Next, please. The second sphere that we need to consider is how exposed are you, right? Not only if you're targeted or not, but also what's your exposure level. Sometimes you can be exposed and maybe you're very lucky and no one is targeting you, so you can get away with it, but usually there's a clear link between these two spheres. Next. And again, when we're talking about exposure and also the level of targeting, it's not, when I say you, it's A, your employees. Next. B, your organization as a whole, right? Maybe some confidential data or financial assets. Next. It can be your customers, obviously. Next. And also it can be your partners and third parties. And by the way, so these two spheres, right? Who can be targeted? Your employees, your customers, and your partners. And who can be exposed? Your employees, customers, and partners. And these are very connected, right? So, for example, a certain bank can be very targeted in terms of phishing, right? But with very high and good security, so the level of exposure is lower, right? But if and when the level of exposure changes, right? For example, suddenly there is an exposure of a lot of sensitive data by some incident or a malicious attack, it might cause for additional threat actors to target this specific bank all the more. Okay, so everything in this slide, I know it's a bit a lot to take at once, but it will be more clear in the next slides, I think. But basically, all of these issues are in the end connected to each other, and it's as a, let's say, a CISO of an organization, right, or someone who's supposed to defend, right, to protect the organization, he needs to consider all of these factors when he's dealing with, or she's dealing with cyber threats. Next. Right, so let's go over to our first case in point, which is credential leakage. Now, just a few quick points here on this one, and then we'll go to really recent examples, right? Real recent examples. Okay, so the one of the most common leaked credentials or exposed credentials come from third parties, actually, right? And let's talk for now about employee credentials, right? Assume that you are a part of an organization, or that you own an organization, and you want to protect the credentials of your employee. I can also monitor the credential of the employees. So one of the most common methods for threat actors to get credentials is from third parties. Next. What does it mean? Basically, an employee takes her or his corporate email address to register to a third party, right? Maybe, for example, again, we talked about Facebook. Let's say I took my cyberint.com email, I registered via this email to Facebook, and then Facebook got hacked, right? And the hacker maybe got the password that I used for Facebook. Now, again, this is something that the company, right, your corporation cannot control, right, if the third party was hacked. But if you use the same password for the third party, hackers can try to reuse it and see if you used it for any of the internal systems on your organization, and this can lead to really serious catastrophes. Next. Right, and often these kind of breaches, they are sold or shared for free, and we'll see both examples on various marketplaces on the deep and dark web, as well as the cybercrime forums. Next. Right, next. We also talked about this. Okay, and I'll just stress it out again that this is a very common brute force method used by threat actors, right? To reuse or to try to brute force leaked credentials from third parties to organizations. Next. Okay, we'll go over this one a bit quicker because I want to get into the examples, but this specific risk of credential leakage, right, from especially from private machines and personal machines, is all the more prominent since COVID, as you might know, because a lot, like large percentage of employees, even in let's say sensitive fields, are working full-time from work or even in a hybrid model, and they're using maybe sometimes private machines or private networks, right? And this leads to a lot of risks, right? Even if for companies who are using VPNs, next, we see some growing tendency with threat actors. Next points, please. Yeah, two more. We see a growing tendency from threat actors to sell, right, VPN access and RDP access, which correlates with this trend. Okay, next point. Next slide. Okay, so this is, for example, an Intel item that we see directly from our system at Cyberint. This system is called Argos, right? And you can see the date of this specific intelligence item. It came from a cybercrime forum, and we see here, right, I censored some of the information, but we see here a threat actor who is selling 6,000 entries of users that include email address, password, IP, and username, and maybe a bit more data. Next. And this is how it looked on the actual cybercrime forum. Okay, we see the threat actor, and you can see the date of this specific threat. And this is one example, right? Someone selling 6,000 entries, which include username and password. And this is some kind of a breached third party. But if I'm, for example, a threat actor, see someone that has, I don't know, knowledgegroup.org email address and I want to hack the knowledge group, I might take this specific email address and password and try it on all of the internal systems of the organization I'm trying to hack, right? And if I do it enough, right, and some more sophisticated threat actors, they have automated tools, right, and they run these combos, as they call them, on login pages in bulk, and they hit the mark in many cases. Next. Okay, now we'll see some of this connectivity I talked about between the dark web and clear web. So as you can see in this point, in this screenshot, this is an entry from a darknet website. You can see it ends with .onion, right? And this is a cybercrime forum, and we see here a threat actor which shared for free a combo list, right? And you can see how many entries this specific combo list has. Very basic email and password for a large number of victims. And again, the reason, by the way, sometimes threat actors, they share this information for free and they don't sell it is because they want to get higher reputation and, let's say, fame, or maybe you can call it infamy or notoriety, but all the same, they sometimes share it for free. And in this case, you can see that this post was posted on a darknet website, but the link, right, once you discover the link that this threat actor shares with us, the link is on the clear web. Next point. One more. Right. Okay, so in this case, the link, right, which contained the combo list, leads to a website which is hosted on the clear web, and a lot of the results, by the way, it's called unknown files, and a lot of the results from these websites are available sometimes via search engines, and they are certainly accessible to anyone with an internet connection and a browser without any kind of registration or authentication, right? So, for example, this file, and again, obviously, I'm not recommending anyone to download files from this website, especially if they were promoted to do so by threat actors. But this is exactly the kind of dangers that lurks both on clear and dark web, and they are often connected. Next point, please. Okay, so next, another next. Thanks. Another kind of common source for credential leakage, and this is totally clear web, by the way, in most cases, comes from paste sites and code repositories. Now, a paste site, basically, it's like a large garbage bin, right? And anyone on the internet, with a user or without a user, in most paste sites, can just put any content they want. And in many cases, threat actors paste, right, very, let's say, sensitive material on these websites, right? And then they later share the link with other threat actors, or they can do it for malicious purposes like revenge or doxing, etc. So in this case, you see that some credentials are being exposed, some related to a super admin, right, which is obviously something that you don't want as an organization to be exposed. And on the right side, right, you see an example from a code repository. Now, the most famous code repository, some of you probably know, is GitHub. And in this case, again, it is used both by threat actors, but can also be the result, in many cases in GitHub, of human mistakes by employees, right? A lot of developers, they use repositories on GitHub, and they might assume that a certain repository is private, but the repository is misconfigured, and then you can, basically everyone can discover this repository Also from, in many cases, direct searches on Google, right? And especially if you're in GitHub, it's easier to search, but accessible from both. And again, you can see in this example, again, I censored the sensitive material, but this is an example of, something a threat actor published, because you see here passwords and emails of various victims, but sometimes you can also get credentials from sensitive codes, which were published by mistakes by employees. Next. Okay, another very common occurrence of credential leakage we see is threat actors selling bots, right, which are basically long list of logs from an infected machine, right, a machine infected by malware or info stealer, which took not just one or two passwords, but basically every password and username that this malware managed to get. And then the buyer can get all of this information, and sometimes this also includes cookies and credit cards information. And this is sold systematically on deep and dark web black markets. And let's see some example next. Okay, so this is an example from one of the most famous bots market or info stealer market. And you can see here that each bot, right, has its own ID, and you can get some information about the country, right? In this case, I showed you here a few examples from the US. Next, let's see one of those in more detail. Okay, so this is, for example, one bot, one victim, right? One machine which was infected in the US. And you can see here that the threat actors are offering for sale all of these, right, URLs which they have credentials from the malware for this specific machine. So next, please. Yes, maybe two more next. Great. So these are all examples from the same infected machine, which are offered for sale as one package, right? Usually not very expensive, right? Maybe for 20 bucks, you can buy like one bot which contains, for example, in this case, you can see that the infected machine, right? You can get the password for Microsoft, for Gmail, for Facebook, for Twitter, for Amazon, and these are just a few examples. Basically, everything that this user connected via his browser and more, including the cookies and other kind of useful information the threat actor can get, right? And you can imagine that if threat actors are searching for a specific organization to penetrate, if they can find a bot which also contains a corporate email, this is a much better package for them, obviously, because they can do a lot more damage. But even, by the way, if an employee only exposed his private passwords, for example, for his private Gmail account, still threat actors can exploit this and try to infiltrate the organization via his private social media or private email and bank accounts. Next. Okay, and as maybe a final example for some credential leakage, we'll go over this real fast. This is how we see it on our system, on Argos, right? And here we can see two instances of machines infected by malware in the risk, like last month, right? Less than a month from now, and you can see the date over the creation date, right? And both of these are red line malware, and you can see, for example, in some cases that very sensitive systems are also exposed here. For example, you have on the right corner, you have a Jira interface of some employee, which was also exposed here. And again, once the threat actor get a hold of this log, right, they can try to hack multiple systems at once and coordinate a very, let's say, damaging attack from this hidden treasure, right? So next point, please. Awesome. So this was the first case in point, and now I want to have a few examples of phishing, right? And again, we'll see the connectivity here between clear and dark web, and then we'll move on to speak about the threat intelligence in a bit more details, and also we'll have some tips for protection. Next. Okay, maybe let's go over a bit quicker on this slide because I'm seeing the time. Next, please. I'll explain in yeah. Next. A bit more. Next. Okay. In a word, right? The word of phishing is developing over at the dark web and deep web, and we see a growing tendency of more advanced threat actors to offer phishing services and phishing kits to maybe less sophisticated threat actors. Next. And just in a word, phishing, it's something that you may encounter every day, and it may seem trivial, but again, it can be so dangerous, especially if it's a phishing website which is targeting employees and not customer, right? Imagine how damaging it can be when a threat actor takes control over an important employee's email, right? Basically, all the information is already there, and the damage he or she can do from there is really sometimes unbelievable. Okay, so let's see a few examples, very recent ones. So in this case, again, from our system, you can see that in a certain cybercrime forum, a threat actor is promoting Google manual phishing kit, right? And you can read here in the text some of the modularity of this specific kit, right? And different services. It also supports, as you see, a one-time password bypass and all kinds of more advanced options. Next. Okay, in this case, again, we see a threat actor which is not trying to sell something, but share for free with his buddies on the forum, right? A phishing tutorial, right? A very detailed step-by-step how to create a phishing website. Next, and again, this is something that he does for his own reputation, and later it can be beneficial for him if he's trying to actually sell something. He'll have a much better reputation and chances that he'll sell it for a much higher price. And again, obviously I censored here the ways to create this phishing website, but very, very detailed. And if you can see one back, right, it's this specific thread. Can you go one back? Had, I think, something like 60 pages of discussion over it, or a lot of threat actors that already saw it and perhaps are using it in their own endeavors, right? Next. Okay, so a few more examples from deep and dark web. On the left, we have a post from Telegram, right, of a threat actor offering various phishing kits and other kinds of phishing services. And on the right, you have a more classical publication of phishing services and threat actors which help you build phishing websites on a famous cybercrime forum. You could also see the date. It's this one very recent, also from last month. Okay, next. This is another cybercrime forum. From this month, I took this picture just a few days ago. Again, a very well-established threat actor, you can see that he's offering a phishing service, right? And again, this is really a business, right? Illegitimate business, but business nonetheless. And they offer a customer service right next, and you can see that this threat actor have different options, right, and different prices and all kind of stuff you can change for the right price. And again, I want to talk about the connectivity here to the clear web, because first of all, as you understand, obviously most phishing is actually done on the clear web, right? So threat actors are maybe talking about it in deep web channels. By the way, sometimes also in clear web channels, but they build it or talk about it on the deep web, and then they release it to the clear web. So the danger itself is on the clear web, but you also need to collect data from the dark web and deep web to be prepared and see the whole picture. And in this specific case, you can see that this threat actor also gives examples, right? Images of examples of the phishing services he or she provides from clear web sources. Next. Okay, so let's examine one phishing example here. This is a very common one, right? A website that claims to be Microsoft login, right, for Outlook. And obviously it's not. You can see that it was already reported as dangerous, and Google Chrome defined it, right? Google Chrome safe browsing defined it as dangerous. And you can see the little dangerous sign over next to the URL, right? And you see the timestamp when I found this specific website. However, next please. In this case, right, I found another phishing website, which might be much more dangerous, because no one, when I found it, no one reported it. And as you can see on the left side, it looks secure. It has an SSL certificate, and Google or any other browser you'll use won't give you any kind of notification that this might be phishing, right? And you also have Outlook in the URL. Again, very, very dangerous, and makes sense that people are falling for it. And as expected, a few days later, next please, it was reported, right, by some, let's say, phishing feed, right, as malicious. And I assume that by now it's already, if you try to log into this website, you'll get the dangerous sign from Google and all kind of stuff like that, or maybe someone already took it down. Next. But again, it's clear web, right? And again, if you, of course, I try to log in with a fake email and password, and usually what those websites will do next, you enter your password, and then they'll give you some kind of error, or they'll give you, okay, we sent you a code to something that they didn't really send you a code. You try to do it again maybe, and by the time you understand that it's a fake website, it might already be too late. Next. Okay, we don't have too much time to go into this in much details, but basically this is a snapshot from our system, right? And we use the tool called Forensic Canvas to analyze this specific domain that we saw earlier, right? And which Google didn't yet recognize as malicious. And you can see that the Forensic Canvas automatically detected that it's connected to a certain IP, right? You see in the bottom corner of the screen, the one that starts with 199, and this specific IP, in the past, it was connected to a lot of malicious activity, malicious communications with files and other malicious URLs, and this makes it much more, let's say, plausible that this is indeed a phishing website. And again, if as a customer you would receive this notification, it makes it much clearer and easier to filter and block, and maybe also take down this kind of threat. Next. Great. So we covered the two main casing points, and I want, in broad strokes, to go about maybe the fundamentals of proactive threat intelligence, right? And how we can protect against these kind of threats. So next. Okay, so this is what we do over at Cyberint, right? And I think we can divide the threat intelligence process, the digital risk protection that we give the customer, into three broad stages. So the first stage is detection. Next. Sorry, it's collection. First of all, you need to collect all the data from all the right sources, right? And if you remember, we talked about in the beginning about the two spheres, right? Exposed and targeted. So first, it's important to understand your assets, right? And this is what our attack surface monitoring, or ASM, offers, right? You need to discover all of your assets and to know which of them are exposed or might be potentially exploited due to all kinds of security and technical issues. Okay, so this is the exposed side of things. Next. And then you also have the how targeted you are, right? And you can be targeted, as we said, on the clear web and on the dark web and on the deep web. And each of these have different kind of sources that you need to cover. And again, each organization has different needs, right? If you're a bank, it's very important for you, for example, to cover CC shops, which are basically black markets for credit cards, right? For stolen credit cards. But if you're not doing anything with credit cards, but you have a lot of let's say illegal trading of your product, maybe social media and fake accounts would be much more important for you. And so we cover both of these fields, both of these spheres, and of course they are also very connected to each other. Next. The next stage is analysis, right? We get a lot of data, and in many cases the problem is not that you don't have enough data, but that you have too much or a lot of noise, and you need to filter it, and in order to get into the most relevant intelligence in a timely manner. So for that, again, we have automated processes, which also include machine learning, and we also have our manual expertise, our experts, right, to engage in further analysis, investigation, and in many cases, direct engagement if needed with threat actors, BI humans, right, to better understand the threat. Next. And finally, we have dissemination, which, again, in a word, basically means that the right person in the organization will get the right intelligence in a timely manner, usually in the form of targeted alerts. And this stage also includes, in many cases, the remediation process or the mitigation process, right? So, for example, if you're a bank and we detected a phishing website that target your clients or your employees, we can also, after you confirm that this is indeed not an official asset and it is indeed a malicious website, we could help you take this website down by legal measures. Next. Okay, so before we go to some Q&As, I want to briefly go over some of the top tips for employee and customer protection. Next. Okay, so this one, again, it's kind of obvious, but I'll say it anyway. Have a very strong security team, right? Sometimes companies remember to hire strong people for security team only after some kind of cyber disaster takes place, and it's better to do it beforehand. Next. Yeah, obviously I'm going to say it, but especially for medium plus organizations, proactive threat intelligence service is very important in nowadays, because without visibilities both of the clear, deep, and dark web, it's impossible to give your organization the best protection, right? Your organization, which again, this includes your customers and employees. Next. Another point is once you identify threats, you also need to mitigate them. So it's not enough just to block phishing websites or to know about them. You need to take actions in order to remediate the threat, to take it down, or maybe to pursue other law enforcement or legal measures. Next. Okay, next, this is also, of course, monitor and preferably via a good TI vendor, sources which are relevant to you on the clear, deep, and dark web. So you don't want to have blind spots which can later be used against you. Next. Okay. PT, internal, both internal and external, is also very recommended. PT is penetration testing. And again, simulating how threat actors would attack your organization in order to be ready for such attacks. Next. Okay, as an employee, of course, it's very important, and also as an employer, to make sure your employees are not using personal devices to log in to work interfaces as much as possible, at least. Next. And whenever possible, multi-factor authentication is very important. Again, this is not something which is 100% risk-free, okay? But it can save a lot of, let's say, it can protect from a large number of threats in a fairly effective manner. Again, this is not solutions that automatically, you don't need other kinds of protections, but it's very important to have these MFAs, especially on internal sensitive systems. Next. Don't reuse passwords. As we've seen, credentials for third parties are often exposed, and then if you're using the same password or even similar passwords, right? Similar pattern, threat actors can pick up on that and hack into their organization. Next. Okay, also, when possible, don't use your company email to register to third-party services. Next. Let's have the next few points revealed all together. So next. Okay, these are a few more, let's say, common items. I'm not sure I have time to go over all of them. You can check them out later, or we can talk about some of them on the Q&A. Next. Okay, so I also wanted to have one or two slides about us, about Cyberint. Next. So as you've seen, and we've seen just a few examples, right? We help our customers, right, to turn intelligence into actions to effectively and proactively protect the business, right? And the business in this case includes both employees and customers and partners. And all of these can be targeted and exposed. And we have experts all over the globe, right? And we help customers all over the globe, international customers. And I mean, from a personal point of view, right? I really see the value of the intelligence we give the customer on a daily basis, and it's really, if I can say, heartwarming, right? That we see actual value in the actionable intelligence we give. Next, please. And this is the last slide before the Q&As. If you have any questions or you want to know more about us, or maybe get a trial or a demo, right, feel free to contact us directly via the website, and you also have your QR code for this. Okay, so thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I hope you learned something, and if you have any questions, I'm not sure we have a lot of time, but I'll try to answer them the best I can.
Thank you, Dr. Guy Almog, for a wonderful presentation. We're going to try to get one question in because we're running out of time. Okay, Guy, we have time for one question. So if we could just keep those time limitations in mind. How accurate is the data provided by threat intelligence vendors like Cyberint, and how do you deal with false positives?
Okay. This is a good question, and when you talk about intelligence, you need to understand that you don't usually have 100% certainty, right? In our system, most of the alert, they have confidence level and also severity level, right? And especially when we're dealing with threats from very dubious sources, from the dark web and the deep web, and you have a lot of scammers there, you need to take that into account as well. So first of all, in my personal opinion, and I think a lot of other cybersecurity professionals feel the same way, in many cases, it's better to get more data, right? And to be prepared than to miss a very crucial point of data. Having said that, of course, we have a lot of filtering mechanism, both automated and manual, right? And we try to give each customer the best intelligence, right? The best targeted alert. But again, this is a matter of fine-tuning for each one of the customers. For example, I think maybe since time is short, I'll give one example from the world of confidential documents. So a lot of time, customers, they misclassify documents as confidentials, maybe because they forget, for example, they make a presentation and then they forget in the footer of the document, they write confidential, although the document is not confidential. Again, as an intelligence specialist, I would still want to give this alert to the customer, right? Even if in the end, we can define it maybe as a false positive, but still it's a valuable detection because you have a document from this specific client which says confidential, and the next time it will happen, it might be a confidential document. So it's better not to miss or filter right too much in order to get the right results at the right time.
Guy, I have one more question here, Guy, and I want to try to get it in. If you could just take a minute before we sign off. You mentioned MFA is not 100%. What do you think about biometric?
Again, we don't have a lot of time to go into that. I think in some cases, biometric is more secure. However, it does come with some, I think, greater risk if we look at it from a strategical point of view, because once you give organization or governments a lot of biometric data as well, it doesn't mean that it can't be exploited, right? Maybe someone from the inside or from the outside could steal that information, and once that takes place, I think it can pose a much greater risk both for individuals, organizations, and government. So it comes with pros and cons, and I don't think we can go into this specific issue in such a limited time. But yeah, on the face of it, more safer.
I appreciate your answer, Guy. And what we will do is we'll direct the person who posed that question to send it to you in email form if you'd like to follow up with it. Okay? And I'm sorry about that, but we're just out of time. But I again want to thank our speaker and sponsor, Dr. Guy Almog, who's the Cyber Threat Intelligence Team Leader at Cyberint, for his assistance with this event. And thanks to our attendees listening today. A couple of quick reminders before we disconnect. First, if you have a question we didn't have time for, like that last one that Guy wanted to expand upon, reach out to our speaker directly with the information on screen or in your materials. Finally, if there are any questions about anything I've mentioned, just send us an email, info@theknowledgegroup.org, and a member of our team will get back to you. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter for more news and event information. And you can hear what our speakers will cover at future events with our Knowledge Group podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. So this now concludes our webcast, Cyber Threat Intelligence, How to Prepare Against Attacks from the Deep and Dark Web. On behalf of our speaker, sponsor, and the entire Knowledge Group team, we hope you've enjoyed today's webcast, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.